Hello, everyone. I would like to welcome you to our virtual learning community titled Understanding Latino Youth Recovery, Issues, Assets, and Creating Resiliency. My name is Maxine Henry, the project co-director, for the National Hispanic and Latino Addiction Technology Transfer Center. I will be your host for today's virtual events. Before I introduce you to today's panel, I would like to go over some housekeeping rules. This session will be recorded and archived for future playback. Everybody will get a link to the recording sometime next week. The lines are going to be muted throughout the presentation so as to minimize background noise and other interference. When we get to the Q&A portion of our virtual learning community at the end of today's events, you will have an opportunity to ask questions by typing your questions into the Q&A box, and I will present your questions directly to our moderator and our panelists. We will also be asking you to fill out a very brief survey at the end of this session. Your input is really valuable to us, and it provides us the opportunity to improve our training efforts going forward. You will be directly linked to the survey after this, so please stay on and complete that for us. So let's begin. I would like to start by introducing the National Hispanic and Latino Behavioral Health Association. We are in New Mexico, and our executive director is Fred Sandoval. The NALBA, as we affectionately call it, was established to fill a need for a unified national voice for Latino populations in the behavioral health arena, and to bring attention to the great disparities that exist in areas of access, utilization, practice-based research, and adequately trained personnel. Our ATTC is part of the ATTC network, which is an international multidisciplinary resource for professionals in the addiction, treatment, and recovery services field. Established in 1993 by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, or SAMHSA, the ATTC network is comprised of 10 domestic regional centers, 6 international HIV centers, which are funded by PEPFAR, 2 national focus area centers, and a network coordinating office. Together, the network serves the 50 U.S. states, the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and the Pacific Islands of Guam, American Samoa, Palau, the Marshall Islands, Micronesia, and the Marina Islands. The international HIV ATTCs serve Vietnam, Southeast Asia, South Africa, and Ukraine. Here, you will see a map of the U.S.-based ATTCs. The National Hispanic and Latino ATTC has a national focus for Hispanic and Latino communities and the workforce that provides services to these communities. Our ATTC is staffed by Dr. Pierluigi Mancini, our project director, me, Maxine Henry, the project co-director, and Ruth Yanez, our executive administrative assistant. The National Latino Behavioral Health Association is also the home of our sister TTC, the National Hispanic and Latino Prevention Technology Transfer Center. We will actually be providing contact information for our ATTC at the end of this presentation. We are honored to present our esteemed panelists and moderator for today, so I would like to start by introducing our panelists. First up, we have Ana Martinez Gaona. She's a peer leader of the state of Georgia. As a Latina woman, Ana has a passion for family and creating opportunities for individuals who are underserved and have no voice because of fear or misinformation of how to advocate for themselves. Her role as a peer leader is to elevate the family and youth voice and inclusion within the child and adolescent service delivery system and in the community to impact change. Ana brings her life experience as a young adult with substance use challenges, as well as the voices of the many young adults she is connected to. Being a part of this work, Ana has educated herself around mental health and substance use challenges to help her grow within the workforce. Next, we have John Johnston. John was 11 years old when he started down his path of addiction. With many hardships and obstacles thrown in his path, including a felony conviction as a teenager, he thought his life was headed nowhere. By a miracle, he became sober in 2015. Congratulations. And his life has turned down a path he never would have imagined. John is now pursuing a degree at Texas Tech University. He knows that he could have very well ended up just another statistic, but he didn't. And he is here to tell others that they don't have to be either. Next, Juanita Aniceto Vera. She can still remember being 7 years old, watching her dad holding a bottle of Tecate, which is a type of beer, seeing her dad drinking every day because he was worried, not being sure if he could bring enough food to the table, and it was killing him. And the only way to numb it was alcohol. Watching her father struggle with maintaining sobriety has been difficult but inspiring. As a young adult with vicarious experience, with a loved one living with substance use challenges, she works with Latino youth in Oregon who are living with their own substance use disorders. Her goal is to help young Latinos find resources to enter and maintain sobriety with services that are linguistically and culturally appropriate for their unique challenges and needs. Next, we have Sol Mayra Trujillo. Sol was born in Santa Ana, California. Her parents grew up in Mexico, but left in search of better jobs and opportunities. They also wanted to start a family and knew that conditions would be very tough if they stayed. So together and newly married, they traveled north and settled in California. When Sol was 3, she and her family moved to Oregon so her father could begin treatment for alcoholism. The rehab ultimately relocated their family to Salem. So they packed their bags again and moved south. Sol started experiencing mental health challenges at the age of 13. She couldn't understand how she was feeling and didn't have anyone to confide in, so she never spoke about it. Having to hide her depression eventually led to anxiety, eating disorders, and suicidal thoughts. These issues started to affect her social life and her role as an athlete. She stopped hanging out with her friends and trying at soccer, a sport she grew up playing and enjoyed very much. Her life turned around after her first year of college, a year filled with isolation, not trying in class, and not making any new friends. As a result, she spent a lot of time focusing on self-reflection and building self-awareness. She read self-help books, practiced mindfulness, and put in the work to become the best version of herself. Sol always saw the possibility of being happy and knew that there was a way out. Although the methods she used were valid, she feels that she could have been a lot happier a lot sooner if she had a place where she felt safe and people to confide in. Sol doesn't want anyone to fight their struggles alone because you never have to. Finding Youth ERA and becoming a youth peer support specialist has allowed Sol to help young people overcome their obstacles and empower them to be the best versions of themselves. She feels so lucky to be a part of an organization that provides the kinds of services that would have helped her when she was growing up. So I want to say congratulations and thank you for sharing your expertise and your experience to all 4 of our panelists. This is quite amazing to see young people doing such great things. Last, but certainly not least, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce our moderator for today's session, Miss Yvette Torres. She is the former Associate Director for Consumer Affairs at the U.S. Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, Center for Substance Abuse Treatment, or CSAT as we call it. During her 20-year career at CSAT, Ms. Torres led the team responsible for development of public health education and social marketing efforts, including the lead role for the coordination of the National Recovery Month observance held each September nationwide, and was the executive producer and host of the Road to Recovery TV and radio series. Prior to her federal service, Ms. Torres was the Senior Director of Communications at Consumers Union, publishers of Consumer Reports magazine, where she integrated the roles of 4 departments: Information Services, Office of Public Information, Radio and Special Programs, and Consumer Reports Television. She served as a Senior Professional Associate for Media at the National Education Association, and as Vice President for Development at what is now the Latino-Hispanic Health Alliance. She is also a former Director of Minority Affairs at the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. She holds an MED, a Master's in Education, from Northeastern University in Rehabilitation Administration, and a Master's of Science from the George Washington University in Telecommunications Policy. She is a former alumnus of the Community Fellows Program of the School of Urban Studies and Planning at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. So, needless to say, we are so honored that she's actually willing to share her expertise and her time and everything about her wonderful smile with us. So, thank you, Ms. Torres, and I will give it to you now.
Maxine, you're lucky my mic was muted because I was going to stop you at the second one. But good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Maxine, for your kindness and all of the work that you're doing through the ATTC, and to Fred also and Dr. Mancini. Today, we're going to be talking about understanding Latino youth recovery. And what are we going to learn about it? Well, we need to learn what a peer support structure looks like as a social network for youth and young adults in recovery. And also, in general, what does peer support mean in general and for Latino kids? Then we're going to move on to talk about the dynamics of lived experience within the culture of the peer-to-peer efforts, and how does that play in? Lastly, we'll be dealing with peer-to-peer models as much as we can, address that whatever folks may know that is available to target Hispanic Latino youth. And if not, how do we set up programs for Hispanic Latino youth? What is the most beneficial approach to doing that? So let's start with the first section, and my first question is going to go to Juanita. What are the best characteristics of a certified peer support network that could serve Hispanic Latino youth?
For me, in my experience, it has been like life experience. That's the main one, because like if you don't have like life experience, then you're not going to be able to connect with young adults. And mostly with like, you know, our culture is so strong, and in order for the connection to be with young adults, you have to be like, okay, you know, I went through this and I understand you, because some of them will like tell you straight up, you know, you don't know what it is to be in this position, or you like, how do you know? Like, that's when it comes peer support. That's when it comes to opening to be like, hey, this is what happened to me, and I'll tell you like how things went, and that's why I know what you're going through. So it's for me, the main one is like, you know, life experience. That's a huge one in order for you to make a connection with young adults.
Anna, do you want to unmute your mic as well as John, please? And do you have anything to add, Anna?
I think for me, it goes along with what Juanita was saying. You know, you have to be able to build a connection. And if you have that lived experience and you're able to connect to these youth and young adults. But the main thing is that when you establish a relationship, you know, you bring down the fear and the stigma that comes between having a mental health challenge or substance use challenge, because a lot of times in the Latino culture, we don't necessarily believe that these things are real, or that these things happen to us. And somebody that comes that's been through it can say, look, you know, I've been through it and it's real, and it's not something to be afraid of or to be ashamed of. And you kind of build that boundary of like, it's okay to like be where you are, and there's possibility to get better. So establishing the relationship absolutely is necessary.
So Mayra, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that they're saying, and I also do think, well, just to add more about like in our culture, like we don't really talk about mental health, and to be able to like, again, like the Latino youth that I have worked with, and being able to come and share my experience and my lived experience and how I like overcame that, we are able to like make like a I feel like I connect better with the Latino youth than the other youth that I work with, because of the culture. So Yeah.
Very good. And John, what other aspects besides lived experience do you think, in your experience, you're working within the context of college age young adults? Can you share what other characteristics might come into play?
Personally, I think it does have a lot to do with lived experience, but it also has the ability to, well, connect as well, but the ability to see it from a different perspective and not just see it from like a single point of view that this is what society sees, this is what's stigmatized, but instead be able to see it as someone who is sort of in a position of authority and still be able to be accepting of whatever challenges they may face. Because a lot of time, especially in our culture, we're taught that we have to be strong, we have to not show weakness, we have to not show fear. And so if we're able to show to the youth that this is not something to be ashamed of or afraid of, this is not something to be embarrassed of, then it gives them that kind of confidence to be more straightforward with what they're dealing with, as opposed to trying to hide it.
Why is it more difficult, as many professionals, have shared with me, to approach Latino youth in the context of getting them to accept help and getting them to seek recovery? And I know that both Juanita and Anna addressed that issue a little bit, so I'll start with both of you.
So I think that for me, when I started receiving services, I didn't think I had a problem. So I didn't think I had an addiction. So it was hard for me to actually receive treatment or anything like that because I didn't accept it myself. So I think when a peer comes into place, it's important for the peer to create that sense of like comfort, where the family or the youth that is receiving services can work with the provider that is helping the family. So I think it's like a team effort where they can work together so they can serve the family. That's really important because a lot of times you don't really trust in like people that work in the services or in the system, because sometimes it comes to legal challenges where either maybe the family doesn't have any kind of legal documentation. So they're afraid of like, if I put myself out there, what if they ask me, could this get me to be deported or anything like that? It's really hard because a lot of times family has that kind of fear. And so a lot of times youth and young adults don't get the services because the family is afraid.
Very good. Anything to add, Juanita?
Yeah, I agree with her. Like I think most of the time, so this comes from my family experience, like of course my parents have always been afraid of, what they're gonna think of us. They're always pointing at Latinos. They're always putting that finger, oh, you guys, like, because of our skin color or our language or things like that, we're always afraid to reach out for help, or we don't want them to keep pointing fingers at us. So one of the things that my parents are mostly afraid of, my little brother is going through some kind of like mental health issues at the moment, behavior and stuff like that. And my parents are so afraid to take them and reach out for help because right away, the laws of manipulation, like my brother grew up in the American culture where he's like, okay, like, if I say this, you guys are gonna get in trouble because they're gonna believe me and they're not gonna believe you. So it's mostly being afraid, and that and us as Latinos, being in a different country where we didn't grow up or were educated, the American way, it's super hard for us to accept that we are doing something wrong and that we need to fix it.
So, based on all of those that we just mentioned concerning the Latino youth, John, I'm going to go to you and ask you, what are the peer-to-peer recovery services? How are they framed, and what is the best approach to providing these services?
To be honest, in my area, we don't have very many peer-to-peer support organizations. So it's a fairly new thing that we're trying to implement, especially here at Texas Tech. We're starting, or I'm part of a student organization called Power, providing the outside world with empowerment and resources. And we go out and talk to, marginalized communities and groups, LGBT, Latinos, African Americans, things along those lines. And it's like, we go, we share our story, we talk to them and connect with them. And then it's a matter of trying to trial and error to speak with these people one-on-one, like kind of keep them engaged and keep them like every now and again, just a little reminder. And eventually they end up actually opening up on their own. It takes a little time, but as of right now, that's what we're currently doing here at the collegiate level.
Very good. Anna, how about yourself? What does your program look like?
So from what I've learned, I think it's about education and a lot of resources or information that is out there. A lot of times in the Latino community, there isn't that education, or there's wrong education, and the families don't know exactly what's out there unless, it's provided to them. And so especially in their language, I think it's very important for them to be able to understand what they're reading or what they're getting themselves into. And so not just like, oh, let me use Google Translate. No, because it loses its value. It loses a lot of its content. So I think it's important to actually establish and put time into it and effort, and to try to getting the information out to the communities the correct way.
Juanita and Mayra, when you're working with youth, do you work with them individually? Do you work with them in groups? What does that look like?
Yeah, so I work with the Washington County Wraparound. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with Wraparound, but I work one-on-one with the youth throughout the Wraparound process, making sure that they are understanding.
I would like for you to please describe what Wraparound is, because Wraparound sometimes means different things to different people.
Yes.
So why don't we talk about your...
Yes, Wraparound is a service provided to youth and family who are involved in multiple systems of care. And if the youth and family decide to go with Wraparound, Wraparound will get these systems of care together and will create a team, and together create one plan to help the youth and family succeed. And so I am like the youth partner in the Wraparound process. I work one-on-one with my youth. I meet with them weekly, sharing my lived experience and being able to empower them and help them with their goals and what they want to achieve while in Wraparound. So that's my job with Youth Era.
How about
For me, I do peer support one-on-one, and also I do groups for my rural area youth. So since it's really far, like for them, sometimes they don't have transportation to get to Salem. Sometimes they only have one bus to get here, and the bus runs at 6 in the morning, and then the last bus to go home is at 8. So it's only one bus going to Salem and driving back. So that's a lot of time. And in order for me to be able to connect with all of them, I'd rather do groups. And when we do groups, you see a lot of thoughts, and a lot of youth of them, they share their story and they feel comfortable being able to know that their parents are the same way, and that, they can change something among them, and that they're not alone in the same area. So if something is happening, they're always reaching out to the other one. Hey, this is what happened, what should I do? Or I just feel sad, I just want to talk about it, So I do both of them, but I also had started to do classes for parents to describe mental health to them, because I work with the Salem Kaiser Coalition. So I team up with them, and they focus on Latino parents. And I was grateful because after giving them classes of mental health, parents were like, whoa, we needed this, you know, we are in, we need something that is changing, and in order for us to communicate with our young adults, we need to know the vocabulary, and not a lot of people are talking about it. So now I'm just now like focusing mostly on my youth, younger adults, 14 to 25, but I'm also including parents at this moment, because they're like a big piece of how young adults need to change for their
Well,
better.
obviously, if they're having difficulty and they're going back into a home where the parent isn't changing, and they're trying to change themselves both individually and through group support, it is very difficult without the parent, and it's really, I think it's a very
Add
critical
something?
factor. Go ahead.
Can I add something? In my experience, when I started receiving services and I finally wanted to enter recovery, the provider that was serving me, you know, got very excited, you know, about me wanting to make this decision for myself, that they wanted to focus on me and not really my family. But in a way, I advocated for myself because I really needed my mom to understand what my addiction was looking like. And I needed her to understand how she could support me if I were to have like a relapse or a setback or anything like that. And so it's really important for the family to be included, just because they need to be able to know how to support the individual that has to be in recovery. Because it really is about family recovery.
Yeah, you know, it's very hard, and it's very hard for Latino parents to agree even to undergo any type of counseling or training, because they feel, I suspect, that they have failed at their mandate as a parent. Let's talk a little bit about your own recovery experiences, and I'm going to start with John. John, what brought you into recovery, and what were the complicating factors that you were facing when you sought help?
Well, I got clean by accident, actually. The woman I was dating had me set up to get jumped and almost killed, and I ended up on my sister's couch. I slept for 3 days, and when I woke up, I was in a whole nother part of the state in my other sister's apartment. And for me, it was one of those things where I wasn't quite sure if I wanted to get clean, because the culture that I grew up in, the area that I grew up in, everybody I knew used. They had some type of alcohol addiction, substance addiction. Everyone I knew had some type of undiagnosed mental illness. And because they were too embarrassed or proud to go see a counselor or a psychiatrist or psychologist. And that's just what I was accustomed to. Like, that's what I saw. That's what I thought was normal. And when I got into recovery and actually went to rehab and started inpatient treatment, outpatient treatment, and eventually a 12-step program, it was a matter of looking at how I grew up, looking at what my life was like, and acknowledging that that's not the norm for the majority of people in America. Like, it's not the norm for like the majority of people in the world. It's one of those things that it's because I surrounded myself with people who are like me. And most of the people who were like me were other Latinos, other, people who their parents gave them alcohol at a party because it's okay if you're around us. We don't want you to drink anywhere else, but if you're home, it's okay. Or it's like, I remember my first time getting drunk, my tío was the one who gave me some shots of liquor, it was normalized. And
what was that aha moment for you, John? When does it stop? When do you say to yourself, okay, enough, I need help, and I'm going to seek support?
About the time I realized that I was very, very unhappy with myself personally. Like, I couldn't look at myself in the mirror. I couldn't stand the person I had became. I had lost myself in my addiction to a point where I became a whole nother person that I just didn't want to be anymore. like I've been diagnosed with mental illness since I was 10 years old with bipolar and then a schizoaffective disorder. So I had to be on medication like since I was 10, 11 years old. And even the medication was not helping with my suicide attempts, with my mental health, with anything. And it was a matter of me having to decide that I wanted to live. I wanted to be an active participant in my life and not just sit back in my addiction and let life pass me by.
I see. Very good. Let's talk about the whole issue of peer support within Latino communities. We've already talked about the fact that parents need to be brought in. I know that I believe it's Juanita that you work with a community out in Salem. Is there a difference if we're dealing with urban communities versus rural communities as we're trying to develop and encourage people to work within these programs?
Yeah, there is a huge difference because there's not a lot of help in the rural areas. We kind of tend to forget about the rural areas, and it's sad because, like, you know, there's a lot of youth in need, and in those rural areas, I believe is where a lot of Latinos are located because, you know, they I mean, in the area of Polk and Marion and Polk County, there's a lot of jobs in like farmings, you know, El Jape, uh, what is called everything, like everything is farming. So a lot of Latino youth are in those areas. So it's really difficult for them to not be able to have somebody that drives them all the way here where they can there's more resources. And sometimes the schools tend to forget about that because when they talk about, you know, like alcohol and addictions and all this, schools get so scared of being able to be open to these conversations.
Very good. Does anyone else want to add anything in your experience, urban versus rural? Anna?
I can add, but I'm kind of gonna go off my top of my head. So a lot of times there's a disconnection between what's available and what's not available, and so I do believe that kind of it goes back to like knowing what is out there, and so it's a lot harder for when you don't have an idea of that, but I think it's just working better to doing more like community outreach for sure, and then knowing what is it that, you know, is mostly needed. Kind of like, I hate to use the term trending, but I mean, it's kind of like, what is it in that area that individuals are drawn to do, whether it's, you know, a certain drug of choice or if it's the challenges that are faced. You know, a lot of times in the Hispanic community, where, you know, that there's a lot of Hispanics, there's a lot of times that, you know, there's roadblocks, retenes, I'm not sure how to say it in English. And so a lot of times families face the fear of those things, and sometimes it causes some sort of trauma. You know, some families get split up or, you know, divided and things like that, and it causes children to go into some sort of mental health state where, you know, they are dealing with either depression or anything like that. And so kind of like knowing what the community looks like and knowing what the challenges they are facing, I think is really important.
Very good. I'm going to move now to the certification, or let's not talk about certification. Let's talk about peer training. Many of you have had training. I know that Juanita and Solmayra have undergone training. You want to talk a little bit about that, because there is a drive within the field to get individuals that provide peer support and establish peer-to-peer services to be a little bit more ingrained in a formal certification process or a formal training process. You want to talk a little bit about that, and we'll start with Sol Mayra.
Yeah, sorry, could you, so just about like the certifications that, like my experience.
Right, and the benefits of getting trained formally to become a peer-to-peer.
Yeah, one of the benefits I think that have helped me with the peer support specialist was learning a lot about like boundaries and how to walk along with the youth, with the peer that you're working with, and not doing too much or doing too little, but just standing right next to them and walk with them to obtain, you know, their goals. Yeah, I had said boundaries already. Yeah, I think, yeah, I'll stick to those with those.
Okay.
What about you,
Juanita,
Juanita?
anything to add?
Yeah, so the training, it's actually a whole week. Intense training is really nice and it's really open. I love it because, you know, you just don't get to learn. Like, they don't just put you a PowerPoint and tell you the information. They actually role model with you. They do a whole mocking play, and you are able to also express a role play. You're So you're also able to express how you're feeling and life experience and be able to dig deep into, like, you know, because they don't want you to get stuck, because sometimes, you know, like if you get stuck, you don't know what to do. They also tell you, okay, if you get stuck, then, you know, just be like asking another question to bring the conversation even deeper. So it's good that they give you the tools in order for you to be ready and be able to connect with the youth, but also it reminds you who you are and where you came from. That way you never forget that you're always going to be in the same shoes as the youth.
And would you recommend for individuals who are working with Latino Hispanic youth for them to look for a training program? I know that Faces and Voices of Recovery certainly provides training that they do all over the country, number one, and that they have a lot of material online as well, correct?
Yes, I would recommend it. And like I said before, you know, I think in my organization, that's one of the things that I'm so grateful with my headquarters, because they have been giving me the opportunity to actually change that within our company, be able to translate all the information in Spanish, be able to speak my language, you know, and embrace it, and be able to go to different places around the community and be able to express those, and in order for me to get educated also about their services, and be able to be like, if one of my youth feels more comfortable with a person that it's in our native language, then I would send that youth to that person.
Very good. What would you say to individuals that are listening to this session, if they are not necessarily Hispanic, Latino, and this question is for everyone, they're not necessarily Hispanic, Latino, but they're trying to get insights into how to better work with Hispanic, Latino youth. What would you say to them? And let's start with John. I'll go to Ana, Sol Mayra, and then back to you, Juanita.
I'd say the best way would be to like immerse yourself in the culture, be around people who are like, for people who are not Hispanic or Latino, to actually go and spend time in areas that are densely populated with the Latino culture, and kind of observe and get more of a feel for it, to be able to understand what the Latino community is more receptive to. Because I do know that there are some things that, you know, we automatically just shut down or reject right offhand because we're not comfortable with it, or we're not comfortable with the approach or the way it's handled. And I think that that'd be the best way to go about doing that.
Very good.
I would second that. I think, being able to put yourself in the shoes of somebody else and understanding what they're going through is really important. Not being afraid to ask questions. If you have some sort of doubt or anything like that, ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't assume, things, because a lot of times it's different for everybody. And so no assuming or anything like that, and putting yourself out there, just get in it, because a lot of times these individuals that have challenges, they want to say something, they want to speak up, but nobody asks them, or nobody says, what's going on with you, or give me your input, how do we help you? And sometimes that's what they need somebody to be on their side.
Very good. Good point.
I agree with both of y'all. One thing that sticks out to me is if we really want to reach out to the Hispanic and Latino youth community, I feel like the providers, the teams should mirror what we look like. Well, mirror the community that you're trying to reach and serve. So including and this is speaking from experience in the Washington County. In my job, there was the care coordinators in Wraparound positions would be, we really advocated for a bilingual position to be up, and that took over a year, and we finally hired a bicultural and bilingual care coordinator, and how important that is too, especially in the county where we're working, where the Latino community is, that community needs to be served. And so I think that just the team and the providers needing to look like the community that you want to reach and serve.
Juanita.
I agree with all of you, and I also had to just add that don't assume. That's the main one, because sometimes a lot of people try to assume only because there's other Latinos, they assume that they have the same story. It's look at the fingers of your hand, they're all not the same, everything is different. So not every single one of the youth is going to be the same. They'll have different stories. And get educated, that's the main point. Educated about our culture, who we are, where we came from, our beliefs, and mostly because some of us, one of the things that sticks out to me is our vocabulary. If you are going to depression, they believe you're being lazy. Eres flojo, and sometimes right away we have this belief also that we believe that in La Llorona and los brujos and stuff like that, and not a lot of people believe that in the American culture it's for them. We are just imagining things, so sometimes get educated and what that means to us, and don't take we're just some random people making things up, because in going back home we do believe in those things, and it makes a huge difference in order to make a connection with our culture.
And really just excellent answers, but really also to take a look at, other areas of support that Latino parents and families look towards. I know a lot of times there are, there's the clergy, there's the church structure that comes in, and also not only are they referral points for people to get help, but we can also work with them in order to get the families to seek support if they see any kind of issues. Talking about everything within the confines of no wrong door and a recovery-oriented system, no matter how hard we try, no matter what we can do, there's always an opportunity for us to be disappointed because the person that we're working with will go into relapse. And let's talk a little bit about that. What does one do to face a situation where an individual, a Hispanic youth may go into, or a young adult may go into relapse? Who wants to take that first?
I can take that. I feel like the main thing is never, it could be frustrating, but don't show it in front of the youth, because at that point you're like telling them, oh, I'm disappointed of you too, I don't believe you're ever going to get good. So don't show that, just be supportive and be like, hey, yeah, you did relapse, but you know what? Tomorrow there's another class. We're going to go to your class. And if you need some support, I'll go with you. I'll be there with you. Uh, just always being able to give them hope because nobody's perfect. I was just telling Maxine not that long ago, as soon as you guys invited me to be part of this webinar, my dad had been 3 years clean. And next thing you know, a week later, he relapsed again. And, when it's family, it's so hard. Like it goes right deep into you. And I think that was one of the things, not getting frustrated and be able to show your dad, like your loved ones and your youth, that you're there for them. Yes, they came down again, but let's do it. It's not the end of the world. We're still like here to hold your hand and keep moving forward.
Anyone else?
I would second that. Another thing is that sometimes we experience, I know for me when I was entering recovery, it wasn't the easiest. And I had setbacks like many times. And what helped me was that I had a support system that was very supportive. And, the thing that they didn't let me know was that it was the end. And I think because a lot of times individuals have so many people that give up on them. And so if they see that you give up on them too, then they just feel like it's not worth it. But if they see that they have people that believe and that want to see them succeed and do everything in their hand and their powers that they can succeed to get whatever it is that they can get, then that helps them, that motivates them, like that, hey, I have these individuals that really do believe that I can do better. Even though I had a setback, I can get back up. It took me about 1.5 years to actually stop using because I continued to have setbacks. And it was the support system that I had that people just believed that I could do it. And eventually I did it. And so it just had to take time and patience and that compassion towards the individual.
What were the key things that people said to you when you relapsed that got you thinking again about going back into recovery?
Really just asking, like, what's happening? Like, are you okay? What happened? Did you go through something? Or anything like that? And then if I was completely honest and I just said, I wanted to use again and that was it, they would be like, all right, so what do you want to do now? And so they left the ball in my court where it was like, okay, what do you want to do? Because really it's your decision. And so it wasn't nothing like forceful where it was like, no, you have to do this and this is the only way that it's going to work. And so a lot of times we have to think that way, that there's so many pathways to recovery. And so one way doesn't fit all, or one way isn't for everybody. So being open to many pathways is supportive.
Juanita?
I want to add something, and I think that's where the power of peer support comes, because when you have that connection with the youth, you don't live with the youth. You just see them like, once or twice a week. You don't know what they're doing. And when you have that connection, that strong connection, they're able to tell you, hey, you know what? Yesterday I drank, or last night I got drunk again. And this is how I feel. So I think like that power of peer support, that's where it comes, when you actually are able to make that connection and that trust and make them feel like you actually care about them, than just being a job for you. That's when everything changed. They're able to trust you, they're able to tell you, they're able to reach out to you and be like, help me. Because if they don't tell you anything, that means like, they're like going a different route. And it's more difficult for you to be able to pull them back and be able, hey, we're going to do this together.
Very good.
I want to add one more thing, and I promise I'll be quick. I started using at age 11, and I really became an adult so quick. I had so many responsibilities. My mom was raising us by herself. And so really I had to work, kind of like illegally, where I can like get money under the table and, support my family, but also support my addiction. And so a lot of times we have to realize that these young people are really under a lot, and they have a lot of responsibilities that they have to take care of their family. Sometimes they have to get their driver's license so quick so they can drive for their parents. And so really they don't get to enjoy being teenagers, or they don't get to enjoy being children. And so it's really hard for this individual to really say, I want to enter recovery and I want to sustain it, because there's so much stress and so much things going on in the household that we don't know unless we ask. Okay, I'm done. Sorry.
Oh, no. No, you're not. We're still got a little bit more questions.
Oh,
but,
okay. That's
you know, reflecting on what you just said, it's really the dynamic. It's really interesting because as everything that you've mentioned deals with the issue of responsibility, and yet recovery itself, it's all about taking responsibility for your actions. So it's a dichotomy in as much as the youth have all of this responsibility, all of this weight that they feel they have to undertake because of the dynamics of coming to a country and trying to make it and trying to help their families. And yet, you know, they're still children. You know, youth are still children. And so it's really something to keep in mind. I wanted to go to John for a second before I ask the last question, because we're about 7 or 8 minutes until we finish this session. Because you have a very interesting life, and John, and I want you to talk about your LGBTQ experience and what you've been through, and how that has helped you sustain your recovery, and also the challenges that you had as a result.
Well, my biggest obstacle coming out with that was I came out in junior high. I was born female and knew at a very early age that just didn't feel right. And in our culture, that's kind of not easily accepted. It's not one of those things that's considered the norm. So for me to come out and tell my family I'm a female who likes females was one thing that was not accepted. Whereas when I came out and said that I'm going to transition to become a male, it was completely shut down. Like, my family was very standoffish about it. They didn't want to accept it or acknowledge it. And that had a lot to do with contributing to like my mental health, the decline of my mental health state, because I became very depressed. I felt very isolated. I felt like, you know, it was me against the world. But it's like growing up in a real traditional mentality type of family. It's like, it was not something that they were prepared for. Hearing on a regular basis that that's not what God would want, and the church doesn't accept this, and things like that, is just something that made me kind of hate myself in a way. And that contributed to my addiction really taking hold. And like, now that I've been clean for several years and have gotten to a point where I'm comfortable with myself and I'm comfortable with who I am and the path I'm going down, it's like I've been able to talk to other people who are going through this. I've been able to go out and talk to LGBT youth and tell them, like, it's not you against the world. There are other people out there who have experienced these things, and it's not the end of the world. Like, when you're a teenager, you feel like it is the end of the world because your family is like your whole world. Your family is, you know, your responsibility. And I think in the Latino community especially, we get so used to being ingrained in our family that we become caregivers at such a young age. You know, parents are off working, grandparents start aging, and it goes from them taking care of us to us taking care of them when we're teenagers and helping raise the younger ones. It's like we forget ourselves. We can take on the responsibility of the entire world, but when it comes to taking care of ourselves and acknowledging what's going on in our own bodies and our own minds, we just shut it out completely. And like, for me, I've been able to go out and be like, I understand having that responsibility, but you have a greater responsibility to yourself, to self-care, to making sure that you're okay for the rest of the day in order to be able to, you know, be that type of support for your family, or be this type of person in the community that the community needs, or that your family needs. It's like being able to acknowledge that I have to take care of myself first and be okay with myself was the biggest turning point in my recovery.
What would you say is the number one support that you received in that period to create resiliency?
I would have to say it came from mainly my friends. Like, my family wasn't very accepting of it, but I had friends who were very open and open-minded, and having someone, especially my own age, who was like supportive and understanding, and who were able to just be like, I'm here if you need to talk. I'm here if you need a vent. I understand you're frustrated. Like, it's okay. And for me to have that gave me like kind of that strength back that I needed. And that is ultimately what has helped me along my path in life, is that at every obstacle that I had, you know, whether it was coming out of the closet when I was 11 years old, or whether it was going to prison when I was 17, it was having people my own age who said, you're not alone. It is okay. Like, we are here for you. That is just paramount.
Thank you. I'm going to ask the rest of you, we've got about 3 more minutes left of the hour of this session, and then we'll go into a Q&A. And I would like to ask you to basically share what aspects of the Hispanic Latino community are imperative to have within the structure of peer-to-peer to sustain that resiliency and create recovery. And I'll start with Anna, who's looking up.
I'm trying to look for my answer. Well, can I get a little bit more clear understanding on kind of what you're asking?
Basically, how do we create that resiliency within Latino communities? You know, we can have the programs and we have the families, but how to create that dynamic and synergy to really sustain someone's recovery through that?
I think it has to do a lot with partnerships, you know, being doing everything in a partnership, family, young adult, the provider, the system, everybody, bring them all together so we can serve this family as a team. Because it's true what they say, it takes a village to raise a child. And so when it comes to an individual that is in recovery from either mental health or substance abuse, you know, they need like the most support system that they could get. And a lot of times we want to make sure that they choose who is right for them. And if it doesn't work, you know, being able to open up the floor for somebody else to come in and to take the place and to, you know, move forward. So it really is about partnership and being able to work together.
Very good. Juanita or Solmayra, anything to add?
Yes.
Yeah, I think for peer support. Oh,
Go
come
ahead,
on,
Juanita.
go Sol.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I think for peer support, I think the great thing about it is that it is 14 to 25. So it gives us like a great opportunity to grow the youth, like to see the youth grow over time and be able to like connect with different organizations or different things around the community to not leave them alone, you know. So let's say when they turn 25, what's the next step? You know, even though you're not gonna lose the connection with that youth, you're still gonna be able to let them come and say hi at least once in a while, because because then they think, oh, you did all this because it was once again part of your work. And you're like, no, you can always come back and say hi if you need something. I have different resources around the community that I can send you to, and they can help you, because I know that
they would transition from peer to peer to coaching, really, because when you become older, you then become a sort of coach. Right, Solmaira, do you want to add anything else before we end?
Yeah, just I kind of want to say it again because I think it's very, very important. Kind of what Anna was saying about like making sure that this individual's team and support system is a good fit for them, because I have been in, I've been in teams before where, a youth doesn't agree with, doesn't connect well with their therapist, and how like important that is. And so checking in on that, and also reminding the individual that like, hey, if this isn't working out for you, or if you're not connecting with this person, that's okay. Let's help you, and like, let's find someone new. I think that that's very important. And I just wanted to say it again.
Excellent advice. And so we encourage people to go to the website of the Addiction Technology Transfer Center to look for other training opportunities, and also to the National Latino Behavioral Health Association, because they've got great training sessions that are on tape and you can listen to, and some that are coming up that are actually extremely interesting. I'm going to turn it over to Maxine right now. And Maxine, do we have questions? And you will handle the Q&A session now.
Absolutely. First of all, that was like the quickest hour in the whole wide world, because it was so riveting. And I think I could do this all day. So thank you so much to all 5 of you, to our 4 panelists who are so brave and willing to share and to show the world what young people can do, and to Yvette for just, letting this happen organically, and to use all of your expertise in communications, but to be able to give them the space and the platform to really tell their story to help other people. So thank you. So the questions are starting to come in. First question is from Jana Spalding. She addressed it to Juanita, but I believe that the other 3 after Juanita might also want to answer, because you might have an answer for this as well. Juanita, who was your trainer or training institution for your certified peer specialist certification?
It was Youth Era. Actually, Youth Era has a lot of peer support trainings, and it was by Todd Santiago, I believe that's his last name. He just got married, so yes.
Mm-hmm.
Sol, I know that you work in the same state, in the same organization as Juanita. Were you trained by the same folks?
Yes, I was.
Okay.
And yeah, Youth Era does also, around Oregon does trainings. So
Perfect.
What is the full name? I'm sorry, Maxine. What is the full name of Youth Era? What does ERA stand for? Like era of an era? Or?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I thought it was an acronym.
No.
Now, I thought it was a way to say youth in Spanglish. But,
Oh, Youth Era.
I was pronouncing it in my
No,
brain.
Youth Era.
Yeah, but I think that's just kind of my proclivity. I pronounce everything in Spanish when I have the chance. Great. And Anna, I know that you are a certified peer support worker. So where did you get trained?
From the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities for the state of Georgia.
State of Georgia. Nice. Great. And John, are you currently certified as a peer support specialist?
No.
Are there trainings?
But there's not something that's regularly done in this area.
For young people? Okay. Well, after this virtual learning community, we'll see how that changes. All right. So Kim A. is asking us of all the panelists. So all 4 of you work in different states and come from different places in the U.S. She wants to know, how do you find out what is happening in each state regarding youth peer support initiatives? Where did you all get information? Do you have any ideas of where folks can get information?
For me, go ahead, Anna.
Go ahead. No, because I'm still kind of like analyzing my answer. So go ahead.
So I think for me, it's a lot of connections around. I participate a lot of in a lot of the committees around here in Oregon. So some of them, like the Alliance for Suicide Prevention, CSAC, the Children's System of Care, for young adults. So I participate in a lot of them, and that's how I get my resources. Because to those committees, they come doctors, psychologists, mentors, coach workers. Everything comes together at those committees. So it's always important for me to be able to get the information from them and make that connection. That way, I can be able to move around and see what information I can get that it's new.
I think Google, because you really can find anything on the internet these days. So being able to connect to a clubhouse that serves youth and young adults, or anything that really is out there in the community, if you get connected to some individual or organization in the community, it just opens you to a whole new level, because they're connected to other things and so on. So it's basically like a chain. So if you start somewhere and kind of just ask questions, put yourself out there, see what you're trying to look for, then you really do get connected to a whole new level or universe of resources.
Great.
And something that I forgot to add,
Go ahead.
it's also like young adults. They know everything. They're like our main key. So when we first opened the Salem Drop here in Salem, we were still trying to figure it out, new resources, and our own youth will post them on Facebook. So Facebook was like one of our main resources that we were like, okay, this youth said that this place has this, so we will go there, So youth have the answer.
I love that. Yeah, social media, the internet, other young people who have their ear to the ground is always good too. The next question comes from Lacey. This is for all of the panelists, and maybe we could start with John. What do you, as a youth peer or as a youth peer specialist, wish other providers knew or understand about your role and how you can help other young people?
I think it's really just that peer support people are out there, and I wish we were able to get the information out faster, or like to the demographics that really need it, because it seems like same information gets cycled through the same places. So it's like once you get it out to another channel, then that opens the door for, it getting more out there. But in the beginning, it seems to just go around the same organizations over and over. But what we do over here is we're really connected with getting people into college, especially people who have, a recovery from addictive disorder, eating disorder, mental health issues, and saying like how we can help them, how we can be of service, as opposed to just, we're here and if you want to ask us questions, you can. It's like, no, come in, ask us questions. Like, we will gladly hold your hand through the process of getting connected with different services or with a college or whatever. It's like to have them know that we're not just here to email them back and we're not going to respond to them anymore. Like, we will be involved every step of the way.
I would like to add that for the provider, when they get connected to a peer specialist that can actually support the family, not, it might sound mean, but not getting in the way, because a lot of times some providers might think, oh, the specialist doesn't have a degree or doesn't know what they're talking about. They don't have the education. But in reality, our degrees are lived experience. So let's work together so we can help this family, because at the end of the day, it's not about us. It's about the family. It's about the youth. or the young adult. And so we have to put our feelings, our personal opinions kind of to the side and kind of see what is best for the family and let them kind of handle and guide their treatment or their service.
I totally agree with Anna. That's what I was about to say, that, you know, please don't take us as a joke, because we went through a lot of training. You know, we're always training, and we always care about our education. That way we can help our young adults. And I mean, sometimes titles, like, they do scare them. You know, some of you have phobias, you know, or they're scared to ever go back to a psychologist or a counselor or doctor office. So what a way to have a peer support to help the youth get to them, you know. So because I know from a lot of experience, my youth that had come to me and had never wanted to go to a doctor's office or something like that, they end up going because we worked through it, and it's always great support for them. So don't take us as a joke. We actually do work hard, and we go through a lot with our young adults.
Yeah, and I want to add to that, like, I agree with what they said, and that we're also people. So we're people who have been in like similar situations, if not different, than these youth that we're working with, and that is so just important, because we, like, again, we connect very easily, or can build a relationship because of our lived experience, and how helpful and valuable that is, you know, in their recovery. And yeah, to also not like get in the way, which I don't think sounds mean, but
Thank you.
I love it. Okay. So Jamie would like to know, have the challenges with ICE impacted your role providing peer support for youth and their families? I see Juanita.
Definitely for me, it did.
I mean, not.
Yeah, it was super hard. You know, it's I think you feel the pressure of the whole family and the youth. You feel scared. You feel it's totally a whole different level of man, what am I gonna do? How can I support both family and the youth? You know, because even though our role is to support the youth, in this situation, when it comes to ICE, you're supposed to support both of them, you know, the family and them, because it's going to create a whole separation. And I actually experienced it with one family, and, you know, all the time, I think all the team that I work with, we were all stressed, we were all worried. But the thing that didn't let us down, it was that, you know, we were ready to fight against ICE. And I'm a DACA student. And, you know, like, even me, I had to put up against my own being afraid of ICE. You know, I was trying to help the youth and the family. And I was like, well, if they know I'm a DACA student, they might just write me up or do, like, you know, some kind of stupid excuse to be like, oh, well, you don't supposed to be doing this, or you're a rebel for going against us. So just like having that mentality that I need to stay calm for the youth, and I need to be supportive and not let all these like different thoughts come between my fears. I need to set them aside in order to be able to help the young adult and the family. So I'm grateful for my, once again, headquarters. They're amazing, and they're always supportive when it comes to these situations, and to keep my head clean and clear.
I think for me personally, there was in 2014, my mother, she got stopped and she got arrested, and it was such a traumatic experience that I felt like it was the end of the world. And sometimes these individuals don't realize that the stress that the family has to come up with money that you don't even know was there, or where are you going to get this type of money so you can support your family. So I think it has to do a lot with education and knowing how to support this family, teaching them what their rights are, because they have rights, you know, being able to support them in a way that they understand what they have to do, what they shouldn't do. A lot of times, you know, you think because you're in a certain situation that it's over and that's it, you just give up. But in reality, you have to be like really strong and try to give them that hope that they're losing, because, you know, it looks like a very dark situation. So you have to be able to give them that kind of hope. And I know that for me, I experienced it and it was scary, but at the end of the day, I had individuals that weren't even they weren't even Latinos or Hispanics themselves. Like, you know, they were just individuals that knew information and they supported me. And I was just like, okay, great. Like, I can do this. Like, I have to do this, this, and that in order for me to support my mother. So it's just great to know information.
Great, great. I love the idea of, you know, just a community rallying and educating. You know, I think we've heard that over the last.
And can I just add?
Mhm.
I was like, in our Youth Era website, I recommend for you guys to go and look at it. We do have an article coming out that talks about, you know, how to deal with ICE and anxiety and things like that, when, you know, the rules, your rights as a person that you have here in the U.S. So I know it's not the same for every state, but we do have it. We wrote it for Oregon, at least.
Thank you. Thank you for that resource.
I just put our website on the chat.
Thank you, Sol. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Sol.
Our next question comes from Olga Valdez. How can we best approach someone who needs help but is not open for that help yet?
I think always reaching out.
Oh,
go ahead.
No, I'll just be brief. I mean, for me, when I was getting services, but I wasn't in recovery. And I was a very, very hard person to deal with. And I think that I caused a lot of headaches, you know, and all that kind of things. But being able to just be patient, because some people just need time to be able to get to recovery. I know that for me, it took me a while, just because I was afraid of getting clean. I was afraid of not having friends. The only people I knew were the people that I was surrounded with, and those were people that were getting high. And so I thought, if I stop getting high, who am I going to have? Who's going to be left? Like, I'm not going to have any friends. And so I didn't want to be alone. Like, no youth or young adult wants to be alone. And so it took me a minute, but eventually I figured it out and I entered recovery, and it gave me 10 times things that were better for me. And so sometimes you just got to be patient.
Yeah. I say, yeah, patience and being just like taking the, like, taking like the engagement phase, like very slowly, like taking your time with this individual, and like not talk about maybe like recovery or services yet, but like just get to know them and spend time with them and build that rapport, and yeah, just like stick with them.
I would like to add, like, personally for me, I had an advisor who would be after me for like a year and a half because I just wasn't ready to like go and do something different. But every time I'd see her, she'd be like, "How are you doing? Why haven't you put in your application yet?" Like, it was just one of those things where it was like a reminder every time I saw her. It was like that someone had hope for me. It was one of those things that I didn't have hope for myself yet, but seeing that someone else had hope for me kind of helped that grow inside of me. And I think that was really important for me personally, at least.
I see as a little cricket, you know, that you have right next to your shoulder. Always, you know, be a cricket. Try to like reach out to them and don't forget about them, because that's what they want. They want to trust somebody and see that somebody actually cares for them. At the end of the day, they will always end up reaching out to you, because I know from past experience, I have youth that I will call them the first time and be like, "Hey, this is Juanita from Youth Era. You know, I'm reaching out to you because this and that." And they would not call me back or text me, but then the next week I will reach out to them until like one day they will call me and they're like, "You know what, today I feel this," and they just let everything out. And I was like, oh, I have never met you, but you know what, like I would never say that, I have never met you. I was like, oh, really? Like, let's talk about it. You want to meet up? Let's go and grab a coffee or something. So there's a point that for them, they'll be like, yeah, they do care, and I can trust somebody to actually talk about it.
Great. Jamie shared on the chat another resource, youthempowerment.com. So, continue.
That's where the article is at.
That's what the article is. Perfect.
Yeah. There's different articles that talk about like how to deal with depression, anxiety. There's tons of different articles that you can refer to that website, and you can read them all. It talks about also like eating disorders and everything that you can think of.
Great. Yvette, do you want to provide any last thoughts? Oh, you're on mute, my dear.
Okay.
There we go.
Thank you, Maxine. Yeah, I do want to point people to Young People in Recovery. That is an organization that really got founded by SAMHSA. Well, we didn't find it, but we gave money for youth to come together. And they created a huge organization now called Young People in Recovery. The base is out of Denver, Colorado. And one of the things that has to happen with that organization, it needs a heck of a lot more people of color to ask them for, support, because they do get training dollars, they have resources. So how do we integrate existing organizations that have peer-to-peer missions and that provide services to communities? And how do we then interject in there the needs of Latino youth? And I think this wonderful panel should contact them and ask the right questions.
Thank you. I put their website in the chat box.
Excellent.
So everybody, please, as Yvette, said, reach out, call for action. Young people are so powerful, and I think the most beautiful thing about young people is they're not afraid to be vulnerable and ask. They're not afraid to I think as we get older and we age out of the young people category, we become almost more and more serious with ourselves. Not that young people shouldn't be taken serious, but what I mean by that is that sometimes we're a little less comfortable just kind of putting it out there and asking and, taking that first step forward. So, I want to say thank you to all of you again. If you all look through the chat box, so many folks have just been cheering you on this entire hour, and everybody in your communities, even though you might not know them or have never met them in person, are so proud of what you're doing. I would like to get back to this here. And what I want to do here is what you'll see, as Yvette mentioned earlier, please reach out to us here at the National Latino Behavioral Health Association, and more specifically at the National Hispanic and Latino ATTC. We always want to hear from you. We want to know what's going on. What does our community need? What do we have to create for our community? What else do you all want to learn? You also have my direct contact information here. So if you have questions, if you have ideas, please feel free to contribute. We absolutely appreciate that. We are nearing the end here, so what I would like to do is also invite everyone here to come to our next virtual learning community. You will be seeing Yvette again on Monday, and Monday's event will actually be very similar, only it'll be on the adult side of things. So next week we are establishing peer-to-peer services for adult Latinos in recovery, providing strength, hope, and overcoming stigma. That takes place Monday, September 16th from 2 to 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So please go to our website and look at the registration link if you have not already registered, and share that link and that invite with everyone you know. As we mentioned earlier, this session will be recorded and will be emailed to all of the participants from today's event, but it'll also be available on our NOLABA website and on our ATTC website, which again are here, so that you all can download for view later on. You all could share it with other young people and with your communities to show them this is what young people can do in our community if we get them involved. Not if, when we get them involved. So please share with everyone you know. One last friendly reminder, we really do look at our satisfaction evaluations. We want to know what you thought of this session. We want to know what we could do for future sessions, and we appreciate your time today. As soon as this ends, you will be automatically redirected to our external site for the survey. We ask that you take 90 seconds of your time today to fill that out for us. Hope to see you on Monday. Thank you for attending our virtual learning session today. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Happy Recovery Month, by the way. It's September. Happy Recovery Month.
Happy Recovery Month.
Happy Recovery Month.
Thank you.